program I give you a review of the Qtec 8300 music focused phone, some hints and tips on running programs in RAM on Windows Mobile 5, a preview of some of Nokia's upcoming E-series smartphones, and I look at RAM on the Symbian series generally, pointing out the good and bad devices.
This is the Qtec 8300, but I'll let it introduce itself. Take it away, Bono. So we have music playback buttons on the front fascia. As you can see here, and you can skip ahead different tracks and cue within the track, which is very useful for long podcasts. So we'll leave the music playing. This is the 8300, equivalent to the iMate SP5M and T-Mobile SDA2 Music and so on. Made by HTC, of course, and the unique selling point is this row of buttons. Internet Explorer and then 3 for Windows Media Player. So there you are, you're working away, perhaps in reading your email, and you want to change track or do something with the music, so you press the appropriate button. Now, Windows Media Player jumps to the foreground, and this is my main beef with this particular design. Having hardware buttons for music control is fine, but to put something else up in the foreground when you are in the middle of reading an email, for example, or browsing a web page or editing a document, it just gets in the way slightly. And yes, you can press home and switch back to where you were from the most convenient shortcut icon, as here. But then next time you change a track, Windows Media Player is back again, and it would be really nice if this happened in the background somehow. Anyway, we'll turn the music off for now and look at other features of the design. It's a fairly standard Windows Mobile 5 smartphone. The usual complement of applications. It's still missing Office editors and viewers, and still missing a basic notes application to synchronize with your Outlook notes. So there's basically nowhere to type your text in using a Bluetooth wireless keyboard. But most of the stuff, phone-centric stuff, is there, including even a file manager and the usual gallery of pictures and videos, and the rather excellent Windows Mobile 5 task manager that I've commented on elsewhere in this video podcast. It's 106 grams, it feels very nice in the hand, nicely rounded corners, much like the SPVC 600, which I liked so much last time. Screen's quarter VGA, of course, 240 by 320 pixels, and a really gorgeous shade of blue or green, or depending on which theme you've got loaded. There's Wi-Fi, which is a pleasant surprise again, especially in something that's sort of perhaps more consumer focused like this. And if we go to the COM manager, you can just verify that there's a full control of turning Wi-Fi on and off, as well as Bluetooth. There's also infrared on the top of the device, which is very handy for communicating with older PDAs. On the left hand side you've got a comms manager button, although it was broken on the review unit, plus the standard system volume, and a shutter button for the camera on the right hand side. The camera is 1.3 megapixels, again pretty standard for this form factor. The contrast is not terribly special. You'll be pleased enough with the photos, but maybe not for print use, and certainly not up to the standard of some other Nokia smartphones we've looked at recently. As with other smartphones in this form factor made by HTC, the expansion card, which I would have thought was even more important in a device aimed at music playback, is hidden beneath the battery. So you have to power it down, take the battery out, change your card over, put the battery back in, close it up, power it on, wait a minute and a half while it boots up, and then carry on where you left off, simply to perhaps put in a new card with a new selection of music tracks. And this just seems horribly inefficient compared to some of the Nokia and Symbian smartphones. Overall, though, I did like the Qtec 8300. I had no problems in normal operation. I'm growing to like Windows Mobile 5. The hardware quality is pretty reasonable, and the music buttons on the front, they're more than a gimmick. That they are genuinely useful, but you do have to put up with Windows Media Player or jumping up all the time. The joystick on the review unit was a bit hit and miss, but then it's been through a few reviewers in its time, so I'll forgive it this. On the bottom, USB, mini USB, and headphone sockets. No major surprises, but a couple of nice features as well. This is the Qtec 8300.
Thanks to Nokia and Series60.com for being the very first sponsor on the smartphone show. We were supposed to have some fairly hot prototypes from Series 60 and Nokia in this very show number 6, but as you can see from some of these trade show pics over the last couple of weeks and the last month at CeBIT and 3GSM, all the prototypes are actually on stands and I couldn't get hold of them in time. Hopefully they're arriving here next week and they'll feature in show number 7. But just to give you an idea of some of the things that are coming up, there's the new E-series of business smartphones, as seen here. We'll just look at them in detail. The E61 is what's been known as maybe the Trio killer or BlackBerry killer, a full QWERTY keyboard and an extra wide high-res screen. The E70 is one of the ones that I've been most looking forward to, a standard smartphone in appearance, but then the top swings over and it becomes a QWERTY keyboard smartphone with a landscape screen. And finally the Nokia N80, a super updated version of the old 7650, the smartphone that started the whole smartphone thing off. It's a slider and it looks fairly similar, but under the hood there's just so much that's cutting edge, from universal plug and play to every comms technology under the sun, and we're very much looking forward to seeing that. All this and more coming in shows number 7 and 8, along with the latest from Windows Mobile, of course.
Now, I've been thinking a lot recently about the way memory is used on smartphones, both Windows Mobile 5 here, as with in the Orange SPV C600, and in Symbian smartphones, and we'll come to them in a moment. The Orange SPV C600 is a pretty typical Windows Mobile 5 device. I've also got the iMate SP5 here, and they're very, very similar in terms of the interface and the applications available and the way memory works. I'll use the Orange in this case because it's just slightly easier to hold. Now, all the Windows Mobile 5 devices that I've seen here come with a very handy utility that's buried deep in the menu system. Press on Start, More, and then More again, and buried on the last page is Accessories. And in there, amongst stuff you really wouldn't use very often, is something called Task Manager. Now that sounds like something like a to-do list, and it sounds rather boring, but activate it and you'll see something Windows Mobile has been crying out for years, and people like me have been shouting for years, a proper task manager. Now, these are programs that are actually running. They're things I've used in the last hour or so. They're actually running in memory all at the same time. Windows Mobile 5 is a multitasking operating system, and using Task Manager I can just point to the one I want, press the navigator in, and I'm instantly in that program. There's no waiting while it starts up, no waiting while something logs on. You're switching between programs that are already running. Now, you'll notice on the menu for all of these programs in Windows Mobile, there's no close or exit, and when you finish with a program and you want to do something else, you obviously press the home button, and then you're back at the Today screen, and they're very handy listed on the top of the Today screen with all the different programs you've run recently. It's a very good way of switching between running programs. If there are more than 5 that you want to switch between, as here, then quite often it's best just to keep the Task Manager icon here in that first pane of 5 or 6, and press that as one of your recently used programs, giving you instant access to a scrollable list of all the rest. Again, pressing Home, highlighting Task Manager, activating it, and you're into the list of running programs. Very, very powerful way of switching between programs, and a quick way of finding out what's actually running in memory. Now, if you press Menu while in Task Manager, you'll see quite a few interesting options. Go to we've been using, of course, already to switch between these running programs. Stop you can use if a program freezes on you, perhaps a badly behaved Java program or a native program that gets its knickers in a twist, and you want to terminate it without wrecking the rest of the OS and restarting the device. You just use Stop. Also down the bottom we've got System Info, and that's worth stepping through as well. Here, storage memory. This is the internal flash storage. Files, PIM data, maybe a few images, small documents that you store on the internal storage disk that you don't lose when you take the battery out. It's non-volatile memory. Program memory listed here, that's RAM, that's what I've been talking about. That's the dynamic memory in which the operating system actually runs. Here, most of these Windows Mobile 5 smartphones come with about 45 megabytes of RAM, and here you see I've used 24 megabytes. Now, I haven't used 24 just with those list of running programs you saw earlier. A lot of that's used by the operating system itself, by Windows Mobile. The most important figure, of course, is free, the amount of RAM free, and even with my list of running programs, which, if you remember, included a web browser and a Java program and 5 or 6 others, I've still got 20 megabytes of RAM free. Now that's an awful lot in the Windows Mobile world, and you're very unlikely to run out of RAM on one of these Windows Mobile 5 devices. Finally, under storage card, 29 megabytes free here on my 32 megabyte card. Most of you will have much larger cards, of course, but that's again a good reminder of how much space you've got free there. And finally, at the bottom, summary of the chip and build of Windows CE, aka Windows Mobile, being used. Well, that's a whistle-stop tour of Task Manager, but if you use it well, you'll find it a very, very fast way of switching between running programs, and you'll get very used to this little Task Manager icon on your Today screen. You'll remember from my reviews of some of these modern Windows Mobile 5 smartphones that each has around 20 to 30 megabytes of RAM free. That's the program memory, where the operating system runs, where programs run, and where things can sit in the background ready to be called on later on. Most Series 60, that's Symbian based handsets designed by Nokia, most of them tend to have much less RAM, and this is certainly worth highlighting because in some cases it can be a real problem. I'll demonstrate that in a minute. Let's start with the 6630. It's a fairly typical Series 60 smartphone. It's been out about a year and a half, runs Series 60 version 2 Feature Pack 2, which is a long-winded way of saying that it's pretty typical of most Nokia smartphones out there. The standard way of switching between running programs is just to press and hold the menu key, as I'm sure you know by now, and you can just scroll through a list of running programs and switch to the one you want. I'm going to use a third-party freeware utility called TaskSpy though, which will give me a bit more detail, and if you go into TaskSpy you can see this particular smartphone is currently running Gallery, Image Manager, Web, Messaging, Calendar and so on. These aren't programs I've just installed on the smartphone. These are things that are actually running at the moment in memory and I can switch to instantly, which is fine. For example, here going to Image Manager, that's the whole point of the multitasking. Now if I go to the System tab of TaskSpy, I can see that there's 4.9 megabytes of RAM free. That doesn't sound like very much, but Symbian OS is quite efficient. A newly booted 6630 will have about 9 megabytes free, so those 4 or 5 programs that we had running are using about 4 megabytes between them. However, although this isn't a problem, if you start running a few big Java programs or TomTom Mobile 5 satellite navigation, then it's going to hit the RAM hard, and Symbian OS will start having to close programs down, which is not a huge problem in itself, but it does mean that you have to wait while they start up again next time you need them. So it's mainly Nokia's fault. They've been very stingy with the amount of RAM in most of their recent smartphones. Let's compare that with another Nokia device. Let's compare what we've just seen with the situation on the Nokia N70. This is a much more recent device, Series 60 version 2 Feature Pack 3, for those that are counting. If we go into TaskSpy and we have a look at what's running, I've got a similar set of programs currently in memory, web browser, messaging, a third-party time program, calendar, file manager, and so on. However, this time there is 28, almost 29 megabytes of RAM free, because the simple amount that it started with an awful lot more. So Nokia have finally seen the light, and most of their new devices are coming out with a lot more RAM to compete very favourably with the Windows Mobile 5 devices. It does mean that on a Nokia N70 you can run up big Java programs and satellite navigation systems, and you won't run out of RAM, which means that the system doesn't have to keep closing programs down. So well done finally to Nokia for this, but it's a shame it took quite so long. And in the meantime, Windows Mobile 5 users are finding that they have far less problems with memory. So why am I mentioning this, apart from to shame Nokia for having been so stingy for so long? Well, partly because I've been researching the ways to get more out of the RAM on older Series 60 devices like this. And I've put a big article up on the web. If you go to the All About Symbian website on the URL I'm quoting here below, you'll be able to see a breakdown of how running different programs uses up different amounts of RAM, how the operating system behaves and how you can avoid running out of memory and causing yourself inconvenience. Do have a look, I recommend it.
Thanks for watching the Smartphone Show. If you found us via iTunes or Google Video, then here's the URL to type into your web browser. I'm Steve Litchfield. Thanks to all the different PR companies and websites that support the show, and we'll see you for lots of exciting stuff, I hope, in show number 7. Bye for now.